There's something wrong with watching people die through a viewfinder. You're not helping, not fighting, not saving anyone. Just standing there with a camera, documenting their last moments. Making art out of their agony. Turning their death into something people back home will look at over breakfast. My name is Specialist 4 Michael Torres, 23 years old, from Los Angeles, where I wanted to be a photographer. Fashion, maybe. Journalism. Something artistic. Something meaningful. The Army made that dream come true. Gave me a camera and sent me to Vietnam to photograph the war. Combat photographer, they called it. Document the conflict for the historical record. Show the American people what their soldiers were doing. Show them, but not too much. Not the parts that would make them stop supporting the war. I arrived in Vietnam in January 1968, 2 weeks before Tet. The offensive that changed everything. The offensive that showed the American people that maybe we weren't winning after all. I photographed all of it. The attacks, the fighting in Saigon, the Battle of Hue, the aftermath, got some of the most powerful images of the war. Images that ended up in Life magazine, in newspapers across America. Images that destroyed whatever illusions people had about this war being clean or noble or winnable. I thought photography would keep me safe, that having a camera instead of a rifle would give me some kind of immunity, that the NVA and VC would see the camera and know I wasn't a combatant. I was wrong. They didn't care. A target is a target. Camera or rifle, you're still an American in their country. But the camera did something worse than fail to protect me. It created this distance, this separation between me and what was happening. I'd be in firefights, in the middle of combat, and instead of fighting or helping or doing anything useful, I'd be taking pictures, framing shots, checking exposure, making sure the composition was right, turning horror into aesthetics. You tell yourself you're documenting history, recording the truth, showing people what war really looks like. But the truth is more complicated. The truth is, you're standing there watching people die while you worry about f-stops and shutter speed. The truth is, you become something between a soldier and a spectator. Not quite part of the war, but not separate from it either. Just this observer with a camera, trying to capture something that can't really be captured. Trying to make meaning out of meaninglessness. Trying to find truth in images when the truth is too big and terrible to fit in a frame. February 1968. I was with a Marine unit in Hue City. The battle had been going on for weeks. House-to-house fighting, urban combat, the kind of war that grinds men down to nothing. I took a photograph that day that I wish I hadn't, that I wish I could unsee, that haunts me more than any of the firefights or the danger or the near misses. But I can't unsee it, can't undo it, can't change what I witnessed through that lens. All I can do is remember and try to live with what I saw and what I did nothing to stop because I was too busy taking pictures. Hue City in February 1968 was a nightmare. The NVA had taken the city during Tet. The Marines were fighting to take it back. Every building was a fortress, every street a killing zone. The cultural capital of Vietnam was being destroyed block by block. I was embedded with Gulf Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Good unit, experienced. But Hue was grinding them down. They'd been fighting for 3 weeks straight, lost a third of the company. The survivors were exhausted, traumatized, barely functional. My job was to document their experience, show the American people what urban combat looked like, show them what their Marines were going through. So I followed them into the fight, camera around my neck, Nikon F black and white film because color didn't capture the reality somehow. Color made it look too vivid, too alive. Black and white showed the truth better, showed the death and destruction without the distraction of color. We were clearing a block near the Citadel. Ancient walls, narrow streets, buildings that had stood for centuries, now full of NVA soldiers trying to kill us. The Marines would breach a building, flash bangs, grenades, then rush in firing. I'd follow with my camera, document the clearing operation, document the fighting, document the aftermath. I photographed a Marine, Corporal Jenkins from Tennessee, throwing a grenade through a window. Caught him mid-throw, this perfect composition of violence and determination. That photo ended up in Life magazine. People back home saw it and thought it looked heroic. They didn't see what happened next. The grenade exploded inside the building. We rushed in, found 3 NVA soldiers dead and a family. Mother, father, 2 children, killed by the same grenade. Jenkins saw them and just stopped, stood there staring. The whole squad stopped. Nobody knew what to say, what to do. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to be liberating the city, not killing families in their homes. I raised my camera, force of habit, document everything. That's the job. Jenkins looked at me. This expression on his face, not anger, not grief, just emptiness and something else. Betrayal, maybe. Like I'd violated something by trying to photograph this moment. Don't, he said. Don't you fucking dare. I lowered the camera, but I'd already seen it through the viewfinder, already framed the shot, already turned it into an image in my head. The family, the dead NVA soldiers, the Marines standing there realizing what they'd done. All of it composed perfectly, tragic and terrible and true. I didn't take the picture, but I saw it. And it's burned into my memory just as clearly as if I had. We moved on, cleared the next building, and the next. The fighting continued because the fighting always continued. Jenkins did his job, threw more grenades, killed more enemy soldiers, became mechanical about it because the alternative was breaking down completely. And I kept taking pictures, documented the fighting, documented the Marines, documented the destruction of Hughes City. But I stopped photographing the civilians, stopped photographing the collateral damage, stopped documenting the parts of the war that nobody wanted to see. The censors would have killed those photos anyway. Can't show American grenades killing Vietnamese families. Can't show the reality of urban combat where everyone dies, combatant and civilian alike. So I took the approved photos, the heroic ones, the ones that showed brave Marines fighting determined enemies, the ones that fit the narrative. And I lived with the images I didn't take, the ones that existed only in my memory, the ones that told the real story. March 1968. Hugh was over. The city was destroyed but secure. The Marines had won, at terrible cost, but they'd won. I had thousands of photographs, combat shots, aftermath shots, Marines resting, Marines fighting, Marines dying. I documented everything, everything except the truth. My editor back at division headquarters loved the photos, said they were powerful, said they showed the reality of combat, said the American people needed to see this. But they didn't see it, not really. They saw the version I'd been allowed to show them, the sanitized version, the version that showed sacrifice and heroism, but not the random violence, the civilian casualties, the moral ambiguity of what we were doing. I got assigned to follow different units, document different operations. I spent April with the 1st Cavalry in the Central Highlands, May with Special Forces near the Cambodian border, June back with the Marines near Khe Sanh. Everywhere I went, I photographed the war. And everywhere I went, I lived behind the camera, watching through the viewfinder, creating distance between myself and the reality. It was a survival mechanism, had to be. If you let yourself fully experience what you were seeing, you'd break. So you created this separation, this professional detachment. You weren't participating, you were documenting. You weren't feeling, you were observing. The camera became a shield. As long as I was looking through it, I wasn't really there, wasn't really part of it. Was just this observer, this witness recording events for history. But you can't maintain that distance forever. Eventually, reality breaks through. July 1968. I was with an infantry company in Quang Tri province. Routine patrol, checking villages, looking for VC, the kind of operation that happened every day, thousands of times across Vietnam. We came to a village, small place, maybe 20 homes. The lieutenant ordered a search, looking for weapons, VC sympathizers, anything suspicious. The villagers were terrified. Old men, women, children. The fighting age men were gone, either dead, drafted by the ARVN, or joined the VC. Hard to tell which. I was photographing the search. Marines going through homes, villagers watching with these expressions of fear and resignation. They'd been through this before, many times, from both sides. One Marine, kid named Palmer, couldn't have been more than 18. He found something. A cache of weapons hidden under a floor, AK-47s, Chinese grenades, VC supplies. The lieutenant started interrogating the village elder. Who put these here? Who's VC? Who's helping them? The old man didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he knew but wouldn't tell. Maybe the weapons had been left there and the villagers were too scared of both sides to report them. The lieutenant was getting angry, frustrated. He grabbed a woman, maybe the elder's daughter, and threatened her. Said he'd burn the village if they didn't tell him who the VC were. I was photographing it. The lieutenant grabbing the woman. The old man's face. The fear in the villagers' eyes. Perfect documentation of the breakdown of restraint. Perfect documentation of how the war corrupted everything it touched. Then Palmer shot the woman. Just raised his rifle and shot her. No warning, no order. Just pulled the trigger. She dropped, dead before she hit the ground. Everyone froze. The Marines, the villagers, the lieutenant, everyone except me. I kept photographing, automatic, mechanical, document everything. That's the job. I photographed Palmer standing there with his rifle. Photographed the woman's body. Photographed the villagers' expressions. Photographed the moment when a war crime became documentation. Then Palmer turned and looked at me, really looked at me, and asked the question that I'll hear for the rest of my life. Why are you just taking pictures? Why didn't you stop me? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. The lieutenant reported it as a hostile action, said the woman had reached for a weapon, said Palmer had fired in self-defense. The official report backed him up. Case closed. My photographs told a different story. Showed what really happened. Showed an unarmed woman being executed while I stood there and documented it. I turned those photographs into my editor. He looked at them for maybe 30 seconds. Then he put them in a folder marked, "Do not release." These didn't happen, he said. Understand? I understood. I understood that my job wasn't to document the truth. It was to document the approved version of the truth, the version that kept the American people supporting the war. The photographs were destroyed. Officially, they never existed. Palmer was never charged. The woman's name was never recorded. Just another casualty in a war full of casualties. And I kept my camera, kept taking pictures, kept documenting the approved reality while living with the real one. The rest of 1968 blurred together. More operations, more photographs, more moments where I stood behind the camera and watched things I should have tried to stop. I photographed Marines burning villages, photographed civilians being relocated, photographed the aftermath of artillery strikes on areas marked as free fire zones where anyone left was considered enemy. Some of those photographs got released, most didn't. Depended on whether they fit the narrative. The ones that showed brave soldiers fighting determined enemies, those got published. Ended up in Stars and Stripes, in newspapers back home, in magazines. Those were the good photos, the approved photos. The ones that showed the complexity, the moral ambiguity, the civilian suffering, those disappeared, got filed away or destroyed, classified for operational security or sensitive content. I learned which photos to take and which to pretend I hadn't seen, learned the game, learned how to document the war in a way that satisfied the censors while maintaining some shred of integrity. But the discarded images haunted me more than the published ones. The photographs I took but couldn't show. The photographs I could have taken but didn't. The moments I witnessed through the viewfinder but never captured on film, all of them living in my memory. All of them more real than the sanitized versions the public saw. I met other combat photographers. We'd talk sometimes, in rare, quiet moments. Compare notes, compare experiences. Most of them were dealing with the same things. The distance the camera created. The guilt of documenting instead of helping. The frustration of seeing your most honest work censored or destroyed. One photographer, guy named Stevens, civilian contractor for AP, he said something that stuck with me. We're not journalists. We're propagandists. We just don't want to admit it. He was right. But admitting it meant confronting what we were doing. Meant acknowledging that we were complicit in hiding the truth. That our photographs were weapons in the information war just as surely as the rifles and bombs were weapons in the shooting war. By December 1968, I'd been in Vietnam for 11 months, photographed dozens of operations, taken thousands of images, had maybe 100 published. The rest were in files somewhere, or destroyed, or living only in my memory. I'd been in firefights, been shot at, had cameras destroyed by bullets and shrapnel, survived rocket attacks and ambushes and all the random violence of Vietnam. But I'd never fired a weapon, never helped a wounded soldier, never did anything except take pictures. And that distance, that separation between observer and participant, it started to feel like cowardice. Started to feel like I was hiding behind the camera, using it as an excuse not to be fully present, not to be fully human. The camera that was supposed to reveal truth was actually helping me avoid it, helping me pretend I wasn't really part of what was happening, helping me maintain the fiction that I was just documenting, just observing, just doing my job. But I was part of it. Every photograph I took, every image I published, every censored truth I swallowed, all of it made me part of the war machine, part of the system that kept the war going. And I couldn't hide from that anymore. January 1969. 1 year in Vietnam. I was supposed to rotate home in February. Just one more month, just a few more operations to document. Then back to the world, back to safety, back to a life where people didn't die in front of my camera. I was with an infantry company near Da Nang, routine sweep operation, same as hundreds of others I'd photographed. The kind of operation that usually produced nothing, a few suspicious villagers, maybe some rice cache, nothing significant. But this one went wrong. The company walked into an ambush. NVA regulars, well-positioned, good discipline, heavy fire from 3 sides. The infantry took casualties immediately. I was in the middle of it, taking photographs, automatic, professional, document the combat, show the reality. I photographed Marines taking cover, photographed them returning fire, photographed the wounded calling for medics. Then I saw a Marine, couldn't have been more than 19, crawling toward cover. He was hit, leg wound, bleeding badly, trying to reach a depression in the ground maybe 20 feet away. He wasn't going to make it. The NVA had a machine gun position that covered that open ground. I could see the tracers, see the rounds hitting near him. The medic was pinned down. Couldn't reach him. Nobody could reach him without getting cut down. I raised my camera, framed the shot. This kid crawling through the fire, desperate, determined, dying, perfect image, the reality of combat, the individual soldier's struggle, everything the American people needed to see. I had the shot lined up, finger on the shutter, the moment frozen in the viewfinder, and I realized I hated myself. I lowered the camera, put it down, picked up a rifle that was lying next to a wounded Marine. I wasn't trained for combat, wasn't supposed to fight, was supposed to document, not participate, but I couldn't watch this kid die while I took pictures of it. I fired at the machine gun position. Don't know if I hit anything, don't care. I was firing, doing something, being something other than an observer. Other Marines saw me shooting, started concentrating their fire on the machine gun, suppressed it enough for the wounded kid to reach cover. The medic got to him, started working on him. The kid would live. Maybe lose the leg, but he'd live. And I'd done something other than take pictures. For the first time in a year, I'd done something that mattered. The firefight ended. We pulled back. Medevaced the wounded. Standard procedure. Just another day in Vietnam. Except I couldn't pick up my camera again. Couldn't go back to being the observer. Couldn't go back to that distance, that separation, that professional detachment. I was done. Completely. Whatever had made it possible for me to stand behind a camera and watch people die, it was gone. Burned out. Used up. I turned in my camera when we got back to base. Told my sergeant I couldn't do it anymore. Told him I was done being a photographer. They sent me to see a chaplain, then a psychiatrist. Then they reassigned me to an admin position for my last month. No more combat. No more photography. Just processing paperwork until my rotation date. I made it home in February 1969. 11 months in Vietnam. Thousands of photographs. A few published. Most destroyed or censored or lost. And one moment where I put down the camera and picked up a rifle and did something real. One moment that cost me my career as a photographer, but saved whatever was left of my soul. I'm recording this in late 1969. Been home for 9 months, 23 years old. Wanted to be a photographer. Was a photographer. Can't be one anymore. I tried. God knows I tried. Got my cameras out. Went out to take pictures, landscapes, street photography. The kind of work I dreamed about doing before the war. Couldn't do it. Every time I looked through the viewfinder, I was back in Vietnam. Back behind that barrier between observer and participant. Back in that space where I watched people die and did nothing but document it. The camera stopped being a tool and became a weapon. Something I'd used to hide from reality. Something I'd used to avoid being fully human. So I put the cameras away. Haven't touched them in 6 months. Don't know if I ever will again. The photographs I took in Vietnam, the ones that got published, people tell me they're powerful, that they show the reality of war, that they're important historical documents. Maybe, but they don't show the reality. They show the approved reality, the sanitized version, the one that hid as much as it revealed. The real photographs, the ones that showed what the war actually was, those were destroyed, censored, filed away in folders marked "Do Not Release." And the moments I didn't photograph because I couldn't, because even I had limits, those exist only in my memory. The woman Palmer shot, the civilians killed by our grenades, the villages burned, the moral compromises and war crimes and casual cruelties, all of it unphotographed, undocumented, invisible to history. People ask me about Vietnam, about what it was like, about what I saw. I show them the published photographs, tell them about the combat, about the Marines I was embedded with, about the operations I documented. I don't tell them about the photographs that were destroyed, about the moments I witnessed but didn't photograph, about the year I spent hiding behind a camera while people died. The VA diagnosed me with PTSD, Same as the combat veterans. Same as the guys who actually fought. Seems wrong somehow. I didn't fight. I just watched. Just took pictures. But the psychiatrist says trauma is trauma. Says witnessing violence is its own kind of wound. Says moral injury from complicity is just as damaging as physical injury from combat. Maybe. But I can't shake the feeling that I don't deserve to be damaged. That I don't deserve to suffer from a war I only observed. That my trauma is self-inflicted, a consequence of my own cowardice. I meet with other photographers sometimes, Vietnam veterans who did the same job. We talk about the images we took, the images we couldn't take, the images we wish we'd never taken. We talk about the distance the camera created, about how it let us participate in atrocities while maintaining the fiction that we were just documenting them, about how we became complicit by choosing what to show and what to hide. One photographer put it perfectly. We were stenographers for the war machine. We wrote down what they wanted recorded and ignored everything else. That's the truth of combat photography. That's what I spent a year doing, being a stenographer, recording the approved version of reality while living with the real one. The photographs I took in Vietnam are in archives now, in museums, in history books. Future generations will look at them and think they're seeing the truth of the Vietnam War. They're not. They're seeing a carefully curated version, a version that fit the narrative, a version that hid as much as it revealed. The truth is in the photographs that were destroyed, in the moments I didn't capture, in the moral compromises I made every time I looked through that viewfinder. I wanted to be a photographer, wanted to capture truth, wanted to make art that mattered. The Army gave me that chance, sent me to Vietnam with a camera, let me document history. And I learned that truth can't be captured in a photograph, that the camera doesn't reveal reality. It creates a new reality, a framed reality, a selected reality, a reality that's always incomplete. I learned that there's something wrong with watching people die through a viewfinder, that the distance it creates isn't professional detachment, it's moral cowardice, that documenting atrocity isn't the same as stopping it. I learned that every photograph is a choice of what to show and what to hide, a choice of what matters and what doesn't, a choice of whose story gets told and whose gets erased. And I learned that I made the wrong choices, that I chose the approved narrative over the truth, that I chose my career over my conscience, that I chose the safety of the camera over the risk of intervention. The moment I put down the camera and picked up that rifle, that was the moment I stopped being a photographer. But it was also the moment I started being human again. I can't take photographs anymore, can't look through a viewfinder, can't create that distance, can't separate myself from what I'm seeing. Maybe that makes me a failed photographer. Maybe that means I'm broken. Or maybe it means I finally learned what matters. That being present matters more than documenting. That helping matters more than observing. That being fully human matters more than capturing perfect images. I wanted to be a photographer, to capture truth through a lens. Instead, I learned that some truths can't be captured, can only be witnessed, can only be lived with, and that the camera, that tool I thought would show people reality, was really just a way to avoid it. A way to watch people die while pretending I wasn't part of it. A way to document horror while avoiding responsibility for stopping it. A way to be present while remaining absent. I'm 23 years old. I was a combat photographer in Vietnam. I took thousands of photographs. A few dozen got published. The rest were destroyed or censored or locked away. And the ones that matter most, the ones that tell the real story, those exist only in my memory.
No camera, no viewfinder, no distance.
Just the raw, unfiltered truth that I have to carry forever. That's what combat photography cost me. my career, my craft, my dream, and in exchange I got truth. The kind that can't be framed or composed or cropped. The kind that just is. The kind that destroys you even as it sets you free. There's something wrong with watching people die through a viewfinder. I know that now. I wish I'd known it sooner.